everybody. Welcome back to Surrogate Social. And I have some special guests with me today, Nik and Jessica Hodge. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. And most of you still, if you've watched us or been with us before, you know Jessica. But Jessica, quickly introduce yourself again, and then we're going to put Nik in the hot seat.
Yes. Hey guys. It's Jessica, aka Hodge. I'm a two-time surrogate with Estelle Conceptions and a close friend to Monica and the girls at the team. I also run our social media, and yeah. So here I am. And then this is my husband Nik, and I'll let him introduce himself a little
Yeah,
bit.
so Nik, give us a little intro, a little bit about yourself, kind of what you're into besides being a surrogate husband.
Yeah. Other than that, just being a full-time dad to our two littles and
Yeah.
being supportive of Jess on her journeys and love to, work on our fitness. And we camp quite a bit. Camping is our favorite thing to do with the kids and get out there and ride dirt bikes, ride razors, do all the above out there.
Yeah.
Some riff-raff thingies.
I love it. And tell us how old the kids are.
Our girl, Ainsley, is 9 years old and Axel is 4 years old.
Yeah, he's a cutie patootie.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to go over kind of what I want to talk to you about, Nik. We're going to leave Jess out of this quite a bit today.
Okay.
So I wanted to kind of talk to you about like your perspective of like what it's like being a husband of a surrogate, right? And kind of your perspective, what it all felt like. Now you guys have done two journeys. And so that's what I kind of want to touch on. So when Jessica brought this to you all those years ago when she started this, like what was your initial reaction and kind of like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, what is this? Like, were you completely on board? Like, think back to how it was when she first presented this idea and what were your emotions or what did you think about it at that time?
Yeah. So our first journey started in 2018. So
Yeah.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
Ainsley was, I don't even think she was 2 years old.
No, she was in.
But, being around our group, we had a friend that was a surrogate. So we kind of were familiar with it. And I had a heads up, and then Jessica started dropping hints there. What do you think? This and that, and, I think she brought it up to me and felt comfortable because I am a little bit more open-minded.
Mhm.
So yeah, it wasn't initial like, no, absolutely, absolutely not. We definitely just, I had,
Reservations.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And how does it work and all that.
Right.
And then she was able to clear up, some questions, but, Jessica is the queen of our family. So when she says it's time to go on certain things, I'm just supportive and yeah, take it as it comes.
Yeah. So, and was it like, do you remember like not understanding the science of it or like exactly like what was kind of your first like, well, wait, explain this to me more, Jess. Like, what do you remember like what your first like reservation was or not fully understanding like your understanding of it now? Do you remember back then what it was? It was kind of like, oh, what are you talking about?
I don't remember anything specific that I guess I had initial questions of. I think like I said, I was just more open-minded and then learned as we went along.
Yeah.
I think you were more like concerned just with me being pregnant again, right? Like at that time, we had only had our daughter. I was only 24, 25. And so, we just, and at the time, honestly, we were desperate for the money, right? So it was kind of like, I think the reservations were more so just, well, does he really want to see me pregnant again? Because at that time, he only wanted one baby. So I think that was like a lot for him to wrap around. In typical Jess fashion, like Nik has alluded to, what I want, I get. Just kidding. Yeah.
Really.
So.
And there were no, bad stories or anything from the people that we have heard from that did it. So it was very in a positive light. Mm-hmm. So, nothing that was alarming at first.
Yeah.
Or, stuck out.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I think that helps too, because like, obviously back then you had a friend in the program that was like an active surrogate already with me. So it's kind of like you were saying, right? That there was familiarity and there was also reassurance that this is a real thing. Like Jess is going to be safe. Like, so maybe that was a perspective that you felt too with already having a friend in the program.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay. So then do you remember like how you explained it to the kids or even now like with Axel? Because obviously, you're not that far postpartum, Jessica, but like, Do you remember the conversations you guys had as parents with the kids, or have the kids ever come to you specifically, Nik? Like, wait, why is mom pregnant? Or why is she doing this again, maybe for the second time? Do you have any conversations with the kids that really stand out to you, or how would you explain it? Or did you explain it to the kids?
Yeah, I would say most of our conversations around it, with Ainsley the first time, we're very open with Ainsley, and she's very
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah.
So yeah, and she
She's
knows
with
what's
it.
going on,
100%. Yeah.
So, and we're just honesty is the best policy. We never hid anything. Whenever she had questions, we, answered it honestly. And the one thing that does stand out is we got a book that says, I forget the title of the book.
My mom is a
My
surrogate.
mom is a surrogate.
Mhm.
And we would read books to Ainsley before bedtime, bedtime stories, and that we just kind of slowly worked that book into our nightly routine. And then the book would sit around, and maybe reading it to her at night, she wouldn't have any questions, but maybe she would sleep on it.
Yeah.
And the book was around, and she kind of asked questions here and there. But yeah, very open about it from the start, letting her know it's not going to be our baby and we don't get to keep the baby. But yeah, very honest from the get go. With Axel,
I mean,
pretty
because
along the same lines. He's a little bit different. He's a boy, you
yeah,
know. But I think
he just felt it more than he understood it, right? Like,
that's a valid point,
yeah,
right?
because he was what 18 months maybe when we had the transfer for the 2023 baby.
Mhm.
So he was still, I mean, obviously very young.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that honestly, we just kind of like went about our day and didn't really like mention it to him the first time. And then the second time he would start having questions like, I want to see the baby, or why is there a baby in your tummy? Oh, I want a baby brother, like things like that. And then we just validate, oh no, this is so-and-so's baby. Or
Right.
did he ever like come up to you and ask or like say anything in passing?
separate, just us boys, no nothing.
Yeah.
But if I can add one more thing about this second surrogacy that was great. The kids were older, and it was our second surrogacy, so we had more confidence for asking for things that we wanted. And one of
Right.
those things were for the kids to come meet and say goodbye to the second
Hmm.
surrogate baby,
Right.
which I felt was really good for them. They got to hold him and meet him, and like we said, hey, this is not our baby, but it was a close the chapter for them as well.
No, I totally agree. And especially now that she's older, there's a different perspective, right? And like, she's quite the little firecracker. So like we know that she gets it, but like above and beyond that, just the age difference of her having the closure to that too, because she had to answer questions maybe at school, or like, oh, your mom's pregnant, are you gonna have a baby brother, or where's the baby, like, so now that she's older, she can have that knowledge of being open and just explaining it quite simply, right? My mom's a surrogate and this is what it is. So kind of to back what you were saying, that's always my advice to parents too, is just be very plain and honest with the kids about it, because they get it. Even at the younger age, they may not sink in, like, or when Axel's older, he'll see pictures of you pregnant that year and be like, wait, and then remember that, right? So I think exactly like you said, just super honest, open, put it plainly. Kids get it. They get it until they're taught different to not, right? Like they're open hearted, they're open minded until, they're influenced differently. And so I think, that speaks volumes to your parenting. And then plus just kids being kids, they get it. They think it's cool, right? Yeah. So,
Yeah. And then I will say to add, like, because again, we're a very open family, and I know that some families may not be, but like when it was time for progesterone injections or something, like we do it with the bathroom open, and Nik did half of them half the time. So then the kids would be like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? And like, we would simply explain it's to help keep the baby growing, because
right.
it's not mommy and daddy's baby. And they're like, okay, can I do it? Like, no, you can't poke me. You can't inject my butt, but next time maybe.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, no, it's
also too with oh, my kid is very emotional. I don't wouldn't want to maybe put him through that. But like you said, if you're keeping them in the dark, you're kind of projecting that and putting them behind the eight ball on knowing and being knowledgeable about the situation.
for sure. Yeah. Right. Because then they can also, at their age appropriate level, explain it quite simply, right? Like, oh, well, my mom's helping another family, right? So there's also a component of that. Like we're teaching the kids to pay it forward and how you can help others in the world and what this looks like for you guys as a couple of how you chose to help people, right? So, I mean, there's a life lesson in that too. Would you agree?
Yeah,
I agree.
Totally. Then, in like turn, it's obviously helped our family out, right? Like we were able to accomplish the goals we wanted. And so, we express that, right? Like, we're doing this also. And their family is also helping our family, just as our family is helping their family. And, they contemplate it and then they move on, so, and then I'll show them like pictures of the baby now. I mean, we're like almost 4 months postpartum. Isn't that crazy?
I know, it's wild.
But we'll show them pictures and they're like, oh, who's that?
Right.
Like, oh, that's the baby that, mommy carried. And like, oh, he's so cute. And then that's it.
And like, that's right. Like, it's that simple, right? They're like, okay, cool. And like, Axel's probably like, I gotta go get a dirt bike or like, go play with a car. Like, he's like, okay, cool, mom, whatever. But later in life, those little seeds have been planted, right? So like, we're teaching them kindness, we're teaching them openness, like we're teaching like sacrifices can also help. Your sacrifice also helps the family, right? So, I mean, I think even at his 4 years old, later in life, he's going to look back, or, both the kids will, but they can look back and be like, oh, this was cool. Like my mom did that, and so I think that's the global lesson of it all too, right? That we don't necessarily see in the very beginning that those seeds are planted for them later in life.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna put you on the spot now, Nik. We're gonna talk about how it like affected like marriage, intimacy, like, because there's a lot of times in the surrogacy where there's no sexual activity, right? We're gonna get into it. We've known each other long enough, bud. We're gonna talk about it now. So like how does that affect the marriage? Does it change the marriage? Like, what did that look like? Because there's a large component of that, right? Like your intimacy and your marriage changes during a surrogacy, right? It's a season of life. So like, what's your perspective? Like, this is a big question we get a lot from surrogates. They'll say, well, how involved does my husband have to be? And how do I explain to him like the no sexual activity? So like, I want to hear it from your guy version of how it felt to you.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely an adjustment, definitely. But yeah, as you're approaching those moments where, hey, this is the time.
Yep, we're shutting
I did want to touch on too, yeah, even during our psyche eval, they even say it in our psyche eval, like, hey, do you know that there's going to be some times where you aren't going to be sexually active? No. Yeah, the no-no zone, yep. Yeah, Jessica would definitely be like, now's not the time. Mm-hmm. I am very potent, you know? Yeah. Can you imagine how bad that would derail some stuff?
Mm-hmm. For sure. And then, obviously there's like the medical guidelines too, like, after transfer, there's no sexual activity, just not even for like risk of pregnancy, just to maintain the integrity and just to make sure everything's sound. But that's a commitment, right? I mean, it's like a good 6 to 8 weeks. And like, depending on your marriage, that can be impactful. Right. And so what did you guys kind of shift that, like your level of intimacy, or how, like, quite literally, like, how do you get through that season? You just hunker down, or did it cause like tension, or you just kind of knew this was the commitment? How did you feel about all of that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of steps before you get there. A lot of reminding, communication. So, when you're there, you realize it's not permanent, and that, there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? And there's other ways to have fun as well. So yeah, get creative.
Yeah, and I think too, like from like a female perspective, right? Like that also is a welcoming time for other forms of intimacy, right? Cuddling, physical touch, like let's focus on something else that we can focus on together, phones down, like more eye contact, things like that aren't sexually driven, but still have a level of intimacy played in, which I think is also still important. And honestly, what people kind of get away from in our normal day-to-day, right? Like they're not focusing on how it could kind of remind us that is also important, and not to mention, like, I mean, we're human, right? So, we're not saying that it was perfect the whole time. I mean, where there's definitely disagreements and kind of heated conversations and things like that. But then it's like we pull ourselves back into, this is temporary. Let's get through this. I'm doing what I can. Because not only during those phases are you leading up to pregnancy, I mean, libido's already down, right? Like you're not wanting to do anything like that. It's like there's some sacrifices on both ends of the spectrum of husband and wife that have to be met in the middle. And, I think the communication is super important. And if like, that's something that your partner or your husband struggles with, then that's going to be it's going to have to be a serious consideration, because it's again temporary, but it's still, like you said, 6 to 8 weeks. It could be longer, right? You could be put on pelvic rest at any time during the pregnancy for anything, right? So
Yeah, so and that'll kind of lead me into like the emotion side of it, right? So, like especially with Jess, she did pretty much back to back, I mean not I mean medically safe back to back, but so you went from one pretty much right in, she was pumping a significant amount of time and then, went right back into it. So from like an emotional, and like just being pregnant, so that obviously shifts the marriage or what trips you guys can go on, or it limits you on camping, right? And so again, it's just kind of an agreed sacrifice, right? Would you say, Nick? Like you just knew like, okay, this is temporary. I can't go camping this winter, but I'll make next desert season. Is that kind of how you felt?
Exactly. I think, yeah, the biggest word, we keep saying it is sacrifice,
Right.
and you can, do hard things for a little bit,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
yeah, but sacrifice, there is going to be a sacrifice. There's no getting around it.
Mm-hmm.
life
I,
is paused a little bit,
yeah, for sure. I think in 2018, one of our transfers were on Valentine's Day. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just little things like that. There's little sacrifices, and you have to look at the big picture and be willing to sign up for that, for sure.
No, that's valid. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, from not like a non emotional, not that not going on family trips isn't emotional, but like there's the logistics of it too, right? Like, okay, well, what does this look like for my desert season? Because that's something you look forward to with the kids, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you do as a family, but especially you, Nick, because that's your main hobby. That's like your happy place is
Yes.
being in the dirt and camping. And there was a
Mhm.
lot of times where you couldn't do that, right? And
Yes.
so you potentially miss out. You miss out on camping trips with your buddies. And, so it's definitely an emotional component too, just not to like the lack of intimacy. There's like an emotional kind of maybe, okay, we're going to shift and maybe a little disappointment, would you say? Or just, I'm kind of speaking for you, but is that kind of how you felt sometimes like, oh, we can't go camping this time or,
Yeah, or we grin and bear it and we actually go, and there's pregnancy side effects. One time we went on a trip and Jessica had,
within parameters of a contract.
Yeah.
yes, in the beginning, yeah, in the beginning stages, in our mile restrictions, we were out in the desert, and she had not severe, but she would say severe heartburn, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
essentially ruined her trip. And
Yeah.
you know, there was times where
Like you still got to have fun, but like how boring is it without me?
correct, and it was had her
Okay.
to the point where she was bedridden, so
Mhm.
then obviously taking care of all the responsibilities around the camp, without your significant other, getting the kids ready. Usually we have a routine at night where you're showering the kids in the camper, because it's chaos in a camper, and
Yeah.
trying to do that by myself, so
He handled it.
handled it good though. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely
And then I will
emotional.
add, like, after the delivery of this surrogacy, there was a brief moment of talks of like doing another one pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we decided that, okay, well, we're just going to pump the brakes, right? We're just going to take a break and see what happens over the next, who knows, X amount of years or whatever time frame, whatever life throws at us. It was a little bit of a sense of relief, that we weren't going to be rolling right into another set of sacrifices or,
Restriction.
restrictions or anything like that. So, I mean, and that's like a big conversation that we have when
Mhm.
going into even possibly just even considering doing another surrogacy is exactly that of, well, are we willing to sacrifice those restrictions again? When are we willing to do that? I feel ready because again, this has been what 7-8 years of surrogacy talk, right? I mean, overall, and so it's like, okay, well, the first two didn't work. Then we had our son, and then I was pumping and breastfeeding, and then we went into it again as a surrogacy, and then another surrogacy. So it's been literally the past 10 years for me. I've been pregnant, nursing, breastfeeding, or trying to get pregnant.
Right.
And like every single year since 2015. And so it's kind of like, oh my gosh, like, do we get to enjoy a little bit of our 30s of like not having that?
Right. So you can plan a trip and not be like, oh, what does this look like, right? You can kind of, that was something you and I talked about, Jessica, too, was like, well, maybe we can shift and let Nick plan things from here on out. Like the focus, I mean, and not to say that the family's not the focus, but you've had a lot going on for a lot of years, right? And so like it wasn't a horrible idea or to put it out there to be like, okay, well, like what's Nick want to do for the next couple of years? Or what does this look like for us as a whole family? Right? Because it's hard to retire, especially if you're not medically retired, right? It's hard just to say, okay, I think I'm gonna hang up my hat on this. And because yours is such a component of how do I help people? How do I continue to help people? But you and I had a conversation like, well, how does that shift looking, helping people in a different way, but not actively being pregnant, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a transition where then you can transition as a family, as a couple, of what that now looks like, kind of like post surrogacy, potential semi-retired, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can
Lots
look
of,
into 2026 and we can schedule whenever we'd like.
yeah. I mean, that's amazing, right? Like you can look at a free and clear desert season, which is like,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. And we do like to do other traveling than just desert. But yeah,
Really?
our
No.
main hobby.
But then I will say too, like he gets super bummed when I am pregnant with a surrogate baby, and like we go to the desert, right? Because it's within our restrictions, but I can't go on any rides or I can't do
Right.
anything like that that I might do in my own pregnancy, but obviously cannot do as a surrogate. And so
Mm-hmm.
that bums him out too. And it's okay. He just likes me to have fun, and I do too, right? So that's kind of nice. We get to go into this desert season, and I'm going to be romping it up.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, there's one thing, there's a component of being at camp, but then, like, if that's what you guys do as a hobby together, it's different if she can't fully participate, definitely, for sure.
Yeah. Like Jess would say, I'm a Cancer, so I'm a little emotional. But yeah, when you go
Well,
out and you're out on a ride and you look around and your two kids are there, but then your wife's at camp, like that.
Mhm.
That is a sacrifice.
Yeah, it's the thing. Or like when Axel got on his e-bike, like if she can't be there watching that first ride, or, there's all these components, right? But it
Mhm.
all goes back to the big picture. Like it's going to be a little blip in
Yes.
the big picture of the kid's life. Like they're not going to not ever have those camping trips again. It just is that one, right?
yep.
Hmm.
And you're a lot emotional. You're not a little emotional.
Yeah,
Really?
big emotionals.
That's okay. That's what we love about you, Nick.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you a good partner.
One
And
of us has to be.
Yes.
yeah, you have to balance each other. So let's talk a little bit about like if you were going to give some advice to like a newbie husband, like what
Mhm.
would be something you would like if you were in a room and it'd be like, buddy, what was this like? Like lay it out for me. Kind of just give me what you would say to somebody just starting out as a partner, as a husband, what it's going to kind of what they're signing up for.
Yeah. Like again, the word is sacrifice.
Yeah.
You are in a way you're sharing your wife for her to do good for someone else,
Mm-hmm.
and just be supportive as best as you can, and let her take the lead, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, do as much as you feel comfortable with as well. Jessica knew that I wanted to be in it as much as I could. I gave her the shots.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys may not be into that.
Right.
you know
Or yeah, quite
Nurse
literally.
Nick.
yeah, Nurse Nick, yeah, I can now give injections in a butt cheek.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a skill added to the resume. Yeah.
Yeah, and just yeah, I guess
Communicate.
just communicate, be open-minded,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, just try and learn as much as possible, be present. Yeah, I thought it was a lot of the medical stuff was cool, just being
Yeah.
there on the all the doctor appointments. One of the
Mhm.
things that really trips me out is when the doctor, I forget the doctor's name, when they made the transfer, and the embryo's just in the syringe, and it's crazy.
I know,
Not
right?
at
It's,
all. Yeah.
Yeah.
How it's all done, and
yeah.
yeah, it was obviously we had very good experiences, but it was awesome.
Well, we went through some failed transfers, and then we had two very
Sorry,
smooth,
yes.
uncomplicated
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean,
babies.
Oh. I think too, like, to go back to it, we've probably talked about this in other episodes too, Jessica, like it had to happen that way, right? Like we're big believers in the universe leads us where it needs to be, as hard as that was at that time, having failed transfers and then taking a break. But from a maturity level, like we've talked about that too, like maybe that wasn't the right time for you guys just for maturity level or how you would have handled the funds and, all of that perspective. So as hard as it was in that moment, it absolutely had to happen this way. Right?
Everything happens for a reason.
I 100% agree with that, because we were in our mid-20s when she almost got her first
Yeah,
transfer.
you guys were babies.
I was thinking about what kind of truck parts I was gonna buy,
Yeah.
what we were doing, where we were traveling.
We didn't have goals of being homeowners
We were renters.
at the time.
We were renters, and then we decided after the transfers that didn't work, to have our son.
Mm-hmm.
And then we grew a little bit and realized what was more important in life.
Yeah.
So when we finally did get a successful transfer, we said we were going to put that money aside for a house and
You guys did it. Yeah.
do something better with it than just truck parts.
Yeah. I mean, and it's okay to do a little bit of fun stuff, right? Like,
Yeah,
course,
we
yeah.
definitely still did have fun stuff.
right. But like, I think that was a difference of you quite literally not being so young, right? Like it was just a different maturity level, different mindset. The goal was to move the family forward and become homeowners. And you guys absolutely rocked it, right? And moved out of state to boot, right? So I mean, you took big leaps, and I don't know that that could have happened at your 24 and 25-year-old versions. You would have had a really cool truck though.
Yeah, it would have been awesome.
Yeah. So, and then I wanted to kind of talk about, like, with Jessica's last birth, like she decided to do an all natural birth, so that was a different perspective. And like, did you like see her in a different light? Like, because you were there for that. You were quite literally her doula, like almost a doula level. We tease Nik that he should be our new doula. But, so did that like change your perspective on her as like a human, as your wife, as your partner, just seeing her in that different light, like accomplishing that goal of having a full natural birth just because you were in the room?
Yeah, it was awesome. She's always contemplated it, and she's never really said in stone, this is what I wanted to do. And when it came to this fourth pregnancy for her, we were taking the kids to school, and she said, I think I want to do it. So right then I knew she was really about it, because she doesn't really say it, because I'm the type where I'm going to hold her to it. And so from that moment forward, she did her research and, filled me in on her game plan. We made her playlists and everything. And watching her go through that and accomplish it was crazy. It was a little animalistic in some points, but couldn't have made me more proud for her to set out and, say this is what I would like to accomplish, and her accomplish it. And especially with her a couple of setbacks, and maybe a nurse that how nurses get, they're just like a little bit of intervention, and she stuck to her guns, and we were prepared to meet those, I guess you would say, the I get not the rules, but the people,
the roadblocks.
Yeah, the roadblocks. Yeah. Sorry, blanking out on the word. We were prepared, and we stuck to our guns. And then even as we got really close, and she said, I think I can do this, and I said, well, you're doing it.
No, you ignored me.
Well, yeah, in my head, I guess I said, you're doing this, and just we kept pushing through. And as we talk about it now, as she's she completed that and was successful, she's just so happy with herself that she did that. And yeah, she's like, it feels like she wants to empower other women to do the same.
I don't know. It feels like, I mean, I know you didn't ask me, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I feel like, honestly, first of all, going 41 and 1, right, on my fourth pregnancy, where I've never gone overdue, like my mental strength was in such a different place than I feel like most people feel at that point, because my goal was still set in stone. I still wanted to do it unmedicated. I still wanted to go epidural. I still wanted to do all these things. And I had set myself up to do that. And, yes, I was induced with a little bit of Pitocin, which I think made things incredibly more worse. Yeah, but even then, I still look back and I'm like, well, that's even more badass. And I feel, honestly, like, people say, oh, you don't get trophies. No, I got trophies in my brain. And I am so proud of that. And I think any woman that goes through birth anyway does get trophies. And no matter how you birth, no matter how you labor, no matter how, your plan doesn't go to plan, I think even like as a surrogate, you can still have your own wishes of how you want your birth to go. And then you just set yourself up with success along the way. Right. And I don't know. I just like, now that I did that, I'm like, well, I can do hard things. I can go ride on my Peloton for 30 minutes and not want to cry, or lift heavy weights and get healthy and things like that. So it's like, I can do hard things. And also like seeing his dedication, and as as a husband, a surrogate husband, right? A surrogate husband, he's like the ultimate supporter. So I think that's important to share that as a partner or a spouse or somebody in that supportive role to a surrogate, really just upholding the surrogate's wishes and, doing whatever you can to make sure that the surrogate is protected and safe and supported, even if that's just like making breakfast every day and dinner.
Or he was good about making sure you got enough water in, and all those things, like that makes a difference for sure. Yeah. And I mean, again, I think that speaks volumes to your guys' partnership and compatibility, which is fantastic. And because you guys have been with me since quite literally you were young little babies, like I've seen your relationship progress in that way too, right? And just you guys matured and even settled more into that partnership. So beyond the surrogacies, like it's been cool for me, like to watch you guys quite literally grow up, right? So yeah, it's been really cool for me too. So on that, I'm gonna ask like Nik, like what is like your when you reflect on like this whole last 8 years, like is there any one moment that stands out specifically, or kind of like what would be your surrogacy legacy, right? Like what stands out the most to you?
For sure, the last topic, her doing it natural,
Yeah.
was a
Mhm.
big one. Also, her, taking it a step further and not just cutting ties off from the families and,
Mhm.
providing milk,
Mm.
instead of
Oh,
saying my job's done
mhm.
and, I did my part, now have fun raising your baby. She was
Yeah.
more than willing to continue to provide and give the baby the best chance at,
Receiving
growing
breast milk.
and
Yeah.
receiving breast milk. Yeah. And then something personal for us is obviously buying our house,
Yeah.
and that was, awesome. And then, our second one was it enabled us to do a couple house projects, and then we put away a lot, so yeah, those are the big things for us, and giving our children, you know,
Generational wealth. Yeah.
generational wealth. Yeah, but yeah, a better life than what we had. Jessica and I, being in California at first, we made decent money to be able to afford a mortgage, but
Mhm.
we just didn't have that little chunk to put down on a house. And this
Mhm.
surrogacy allowed us to get that chunk and
Mhm.
put down on a house, which is a big goal for us
Yeah.
and a lot of families, honestly.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean that becomes the legacy, right? Like
Mhm.
you wanted better for your kids and you guys did it. You changed the pattern, right?
Yes,
And so
correct.
I think that's huge. And so above and beyond like the sacrifices, the giving forward, to take it back to your family, this is what your legacy is, right? Like it was a couple, in the grand scheme of it's a couple years of life, but then now the
Mhm.
kids have a house, they have a yard, they have a pool, and then that just keeps, projecting the life different than what you guys had. And that was
Yep,
your goal. Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me emotional.
I know. I think it's so cool. And I think it's so cool because, again, we're open with our kids. Like, we don't hide anything from them. Like, it's
Right.
like, yeah, we were able to do the things that we had set our minds to do because I was able and we sacrificed me and my body really for those, to carry another baby. And, it's just, it's so fulfilling and in so many ways. And teaching our kids that things come from hard work and sacrifice is also, I think, a legacy, life rule, so
Yeah, no,
we don't think get things handed to us, unfortunately.
no, wouldn't it be easier? I know. So, I mean, yeah, I think that that's great, right? So, I think that's a different perspective that we don't often touch on is yes, the surrogate has pride. Yes, you have pride. You're like, yes, I did this. My body can do this. But it's so nice. Like, again, thank you, Nik, for being with us today because it's so nice to hear a husband's perspective, right? Or how that projects to the whole family. Like, the kids had to sacrifice in this too. There was things they couldn't do because mom was pregnant or mom didn't feel good or maybe mom was tired. And so it is an entire community, quite literally, right? With the family community that gets on board for this. And so I really appreciate, you being so open and honest with me and, being willing to share your perspective because I think it's super cool to hear that. We don't quite hear that often. Obviously, we have a special, relationship. So I know Nik much better than most of the husbands, but, it's so nice to hear that. And I really appreciate you being open once again to talking about it and honestly helping other partners, right? Husbands, partners, boyfriends, what this looks like to be the dude in the situation. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I feel like, it's good. It's okay to ask questions too, right? If you're the husband or the spouse and your wife wants to do this, like ask the questions. Talk on the phone with Monica if you have to, or,
Mhm.
whatever it might be, but
Yeah,
there's no silly question. And, I think even though we've gone through the process so many times, there was still times where he's like, what's going on? Or we
yeah,
really have to do this again, or, or things like
yeah.
that.
No, that's a great point too, Hodge. Like if because I'll get on the phone with couples and it's usually the husbands are like, well, is my wife going to be safe? Like, what does this look like, right? So I think kind of the similar questions that Nik had in the very beginning.
Yeah.
But if that's totally appropriate, I'll get on the phone, like because this is quite literally we all have to be in it to win it together as a whole team from the start. So just as much as you as the surrogate needs to be comfortable, so does your husband or partner, right? Like they
Mhm.
need to know that you're safe in what you're deciding. Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And I really think this will be super helpful. And I've said it a million times, but I'll say it again. I'm so proud of the progression that you guys have made through the years. And I'm so glad to have been a part of it for so many years that I'm going to cry again. But, and just watch the kids grow up and, all of that. And you guys grow up too. So it's been really special. So
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know. We love you too. I love you too. All right. So thank you so much. And I appreciate you guys. And we will talk soon.
Sounds good.
Sounds
Thanks, everybody. Bye.